Welcome to sig-testing. I think I recognize everybody here, so we can go ahead and get started. But um, yeah, I think we have a few things on the agenda. The only thing I will note is, or no, I know there's the talk about the UI. I might kick that a little bit later if discussion goes long, just so we can make sure we talk about the annual report as well. Sorry for the last minute agenda change. I also need to check what that Slack bit is because I did not see what that. Anyway, I'll just rearrange the agenda if needed. Oh, okay, that also works. Thank you. uh, yeah. Um, that said, I don't know if Ben was joining today or not, so yeah, we'll just start. Yeah, feel free to add items to the agenda as well if needed, as usual. Um, okay. I'll go ahead and start with the annual report then. We're a bit late on submitting it, so apologies to the folks tracking that. But there are some basic changes, and then I think we're going to be making a follow-up change as well that I'll note once that's actually being made, because that should be sent to the mail list. But main ones are just there are 3 items tagged, and then like a few of the usual items on here. Actually, sorry. What is the best way to go about this? Like, I can pull up literally the PR, but yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Okay. A couple things. Gubernator was still mentioned in the community docs. I went through and removed some of that because we don't really, we still have the code hosted, which is fine, but we aren't really making use of it because the site hosting it is turned down. So those are a couple changes. Yeah, same thing. Spyglass is the thing to use instead. I added a redirect to the actual contributing page because we don't have one in community, just a utility. For the actual report itself, basically, I've noted 3 bits that were kind of highlighted in announcements or whatnot that we have done. This is the alpha beta testing, like consistency update from last year. The invariant testing, which currently is used for the API declarative validation, I believe. And then test grid UI, I also have noted it is very much in progress and early, but like we did technically note that. So if there is any other work that should be highlighted here, please let me know. I am happy to make amendments here. Also, if any of this seems inappropriately described, please let me know and I will update. Um, I think the PR should be linked in the notes. If it is not, though, we'll add it. But yeah. Um, basically called out like we still need maintainers, including especially for Prow, since I think that's the one that needs particular attention. I can also call out test grid UI. I think we have a few active-ish people on that though, so I wasn't sure if that one needs as much call out. Only talk I'm aware of is the one from EU 2025 from a few folks, Ben and Antonia, I believe. Um, invariant kept, which I believe is autofilled, and then some of the rest of these I think are autofilled from stuff we have. And then I think we are noting there may be an update to chairs, so we'll settle that amongst chairs and send an update. I think that is it though. Yeah, the rest was like Kubernetes cleanup. So yeah. If there's anything that folks want to note about this, please do. Otherwise, yeah. Uh, if all looks well, I think hopefully we can update and then send this in later today or tomorrow. Cool. Okay, if there is nothing else yet, then we can go ahead with the next bit. Patrick, you had a note, or sorry, somebody has a note here, possibly from Patrick.
Yeah, I think Ben said I added something beforehand, but no, that's the annual report here. So yeah, I started a Slack thread, sorry, already a while ago about the flake rates that we have in our GCE job. it's by far the one that fails most often in pre-submits right now, which is very annoying because it means retesting a PR doesn't get merged and people don't know what to do with it. And at the same time, the SIG release team is watching the periodic job and has recently started to file a lot of flaky test issues. The problem is that these are all kinds of different tests that all fail once in that one job. And overall, it very much looks like a stability issue with that job because everything else is fine. It's really just this one job where we have problem getting our E2E tests to run reliably. And I was speculating a little bit about what the root cause might be. Today I came back to that and looked at the latest failing runs and compared against the kind job, which is really mostly rock solid. And one thing that I found is that we run more Ginkgo workers with the E2 GCE job, just 5 more, 30 instead of 25. But that means that we have 5 more tests running in parallel, uh, which might make a difference. The other speculation was that it might be the selected tests. So I looked at that, but nothing obviously came up. There are some reasons why we run different sets of tests, but nothing really stood out there either as a culprit of a test that is perhaps not correctly labeled as disruptive, but that doesn't seem to be it either. What I'm currently doing, and that's the link that I added next to that agenda topic, is I took a PR, made some changes to the Ginkgo script to make it run. Well, the first change was make it run the same tests as kind, but that didn't make a difference. And then I added the second commit, which artificially lowers the numbers of workers to 25. And yeah, that's a bit easier to execute than setting up a temporary CI job. Uh, I'm triggering a retest manually, or well, not manually, with a script. I watch whether the job is done, and then immediately fire off another retest. So I've been doing that the whole day, and the PR history with 25 jobs over the last 8 hours or 6 hours or so is looking fairly good. The very initial job test with 30 workers had already a failure, but then ever since I came reduced it to 25, it has been stable. So that tentatively looks like it might help, but I need more runs to be confident. And also do the inverse testing, go back to 30 and see whether it then flakes more. But that might have been it. And it's a very simple change in our job definition, which would make me very happy. But
Just to
I
check,
don't
so
know yet.
the hypothetical instability is from having more Ginkgo runners working?
Yeah, each Ginkgo worker executes one E2E test, and they run in parallel. So you get basically 20% more load on the API server primarily, then also on certain nodes perhaps. Yeah, that's seems to be a difference, and it seems to make a relevant difference in terms of overall stability.
Yeah, that's fair. Cool.
Yeah, I'll report back on Slack tomorrow if I find more or when I have more results.
Yeah, I think the other aspect that you were highlighting was the gap in, like, which tests run, or
But it's minor.
it
It's,
is
I
pretty
mean,
small now. It was a lot
yes,
worse. I think
yeah,
we're still not running things like ingress that we could if we really wanted to. We've been running those in, like, separate jobs because they depend on cloud
yeah.
provider kind, which we didn't
So
have,
you're talking about running more jobs in kind, which
or more
is
test cases.
yeah, more test cases in the kind configuration, which is worthwhile.
It's
Um, it's just not the problem that I'm trying to solve right now.
Yeah. But you were highlight but you like, while you did this, you highlighted, like, what the gaps
Yeah,
are between them, and it's pretty close now. It's useful to have them nearly identical because then you can exclude that from the reasons.
Yeah.
But it might actually be close enough already at this point.
Yeah, the
I
thing
like
is,
the
that
HTTP proxy
the
one.
problem is you don't know. That's why I even considered that as a possible explanation.
Yeah,
But
it's a little bit annoying because you don't quite know, but I do think if you dig into them, you can pretty much glue them. Like the HTTP proxy test is super cheap and is not disrupting other tests. But to get it on kind, we actually need different functionality in kubectl because the underlying tooling will refuse to use a proxy on localhost. There's been some discussion about that, but it would wind up being new tests anyhow.
what annoys me more is that some of these are runtime skips
Yeah,
based on the provider setting, and that's very opaque and not very obvious. It also means that we start tests, say on kind, that then just run for a short while and then terminate again. It
yeah,
would be much cleaner to have a feature defined that says the cluster must support, I don't know, HTTP proxy. But then again, this might be a one-off thing, so I'm probably not going to propose a PR that cleans that up, but it is a bit.
I think what we
Yeah,
actually want is any test that is using provider is a big smell at this point. We remove the cloud providers.
yeah.
At some point, we want the provider flag to become a no op. Unfortunately, it's not, and they're treated slightly differently in various places, and it's hard to find. But I do think anytime we notice one, like that test should be flagged. For example, I think I have a thread open on the SSH test that was like, do we even need this anymore? Because I think the only SSH test we're running in cluster E2E is can you use the SSH utility? And then no cluster E2E tests use them, only node E2E tests use it. So I think we might be able to just move that fully to node E2E and remove the test that just verifies that the framework itself can SSH. We don't
Yeah,
want tests using SSH, right? Like so far, I have yet to encounter a test that touches the provider concept that is not problematic in today's era. They made sense when we had cloud provider in tree.
I fully agree. Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if anybody has time for that, but it that maybe we could even just file an issue for people to look at. Like if a test reads that field, then it probably needs to be evaluated. And either it should be removed or it should be fixed to not depend on the provider. Similarly, I was wondering, there's that one test you mentioned that needs more schedulable nodes. That seems surprising.
It does a few things like routing traffic to different nodes, and apparently it really wants 3 nodes to test with. So that's it. Yeah. And it runs for 80 seconds. So it does quite a few things. And I think the negative case where it checks every second that something is not working, I guess it shouldn't be too bad in terms of load. But yeah, it was one thing that stood out a bit in my analysis. But ultimately, only when I looked at the test, it didn't really show up as something that runs in parallel to a failed test in those 3 runs that had flakes.
Okay. Yeah, we can also visit AppArmor. A few of the tests that Kind was excluding in the past were actually just based on like these tests are unreliable, but we're already trying to get people to, take this CI signal seriously. So we're skipping a few of these. Or they were like flakier on Kind for some reason. I believe at head we've dropped that list entirely since
I
maybe
think it's
135.
gone. Yeah, I think it's gone.
But like there has been some history of that as well. And so it used to be the case that like GC could be a little bit flakier just because there was a difference in pruning tests. We really should just be using the flaky tag for that, but it wasn't totally clear if they were flaky everywhere or possibly only flaky on Kind. I think that's all resolved now, though. There's also the handful of tests from tests from kubetest itself, but those are not real tests. Well, this is very cool. Thank you. I've been noticing that we've had a bit of a fallback to flakiness in this release cycle, and
Yeah,
Antonio
I'm
and I
not.
were
I'm not.
discussing the other day. Not haven't had a lot of time to follow up on that, but it feels bad.
Yeah, it did. It did. I was busy too for a while and put it aside, but it always was on my plate for at some point to come back to it. I don't know whether I feel really haven't have a full solution yet, but well, right now I'm hopeful. We'll see.
Thank you.
Cool. Any further comments on this? Cool. All right. Erno, next bit. Go for it.
Is it me?
Yeah. Or I think you technically have the next item if you want to discuss, but I suspect this is going to be discussing the UI between several people. So go ahead and start though.
Yeah, well, the TLDR of the idea is to basically beautify the current UI we have for the new Tesla deployment. So I try to write code that using. I went on internet, I went on Reddit, look on YouTube, and basically everyone is like, "Oh, use Tailwind." Yeah, I was like, "Okay, let's write code that, install it, try to figure out how to make it uh, compatible with Lite, and it's working." Now, question raised is like how we deal with sustainability, how we deal with like long-term maintenance. So I took a look at other frameworks, and a few of them are already maintenance mode. Like the Google ones is maintenance mode, Shole's is maintenance mode. So I'm like, I'm happy to do vanilla CSS if that's needed, or we can basically pick one and stick to it because I don't think we want to basically touch that UI every year. Probably we can roll out something working and deal with the 6 seconds delay, and we can upgrade that in 3 years. Or someone else will upgrade that in 3 years. So I think that's the main idea. So I don't have a strong opinion about the approach. I'm focused on having a better CSS style rather than Benjamin Peterson doing basically an entire revamp of the UI. Because we basically go for, oh yeah, we have those group of grades, so like, oh, let's have like different things. So yeah. I have a strong opinion. If anyone is like tell me drop Tailwind, I would do it.
Hey, I can jump in a little bit. I've been doing most of the development lately for the project. I think I had this discussion with Michelle, like as we got the development version deployed, I guess. It really seems like all the different pages aren't cohesive, that there isn't like one design across the board as far as like what this new test grid UI is. You click between different pages, and if like you hid the nav bar from me, I could tell you that these are different websites. These aren't actually part of the same project. And it's no one's fault. I think I myself ended up changing a lot of stuff in like a half-ass attempt to migrate some stuff. I did some more like last month, but I kind of got lost from it. I don't have any opinion on what we use, but I think it'd be very good if a few of us sat down and started discussing like what it should look like, what are the actual goals that we want to get within the current UI, what it's not doing for us, which I think one of the main things for me was just being able to navigate around and load the page consistently. It ends up crashing my browser half the time when I try to load all that K8s data. So yeah, I think it's very important for us to sit down, at least have like a design meeting or some sort of discussion where we know what we want to get out of it. I am completely indifferent to framework, to CSS framework, whether we use lit or whatever. I have no opinion on any of it. But yes, feature parity is what I'd really want, because then I hope we can get to a point where we can start improving test grid. Like let's get feature parity, and then we can start adding on all the nice things that people don't really know they want right now for test grid.
I could agree with you on that. I probably have more opinion, but I can hold back since Ben, the other Ben, not me, raised his hand, so he should go first.
I actually just want to take this opportunity to throw a small tangent at our note. As we're making progress on this one, we also need to circle back on the discussion with sig-testing to split the config between the like Kubernetes test grid and the not Kubernetes things, so that ideally the like new test grid instance can just run the Kubernetes things, and we can leave the legacy one or whatever we want to call that running everything, and then eventually give some notice when we think there's parity that like other projects should pick up their own instance. Because right now Kubernetes doesn't pay to run this, right? But when we get parity and we start paying to run it, we don't necessarily want to provide test grid to the entire internet.
I
So
think we
that
I
might
think we're
help.
not.
That might help with some of the performance bits as well if we like just if we can pare down what we're serving and rendering.
Yeah,
I think we're
that,
not. We
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
I think yeah. For Benjamin point, I think we are in agreement about this. I think there's a problem of bandwidth for execution because we have to like move the backend to the infrastructure community and basically deploy the.
No, not that. We just need the bucket. There's a here. I'll link the issue. Just while you're spending some time looking at test grid, Mr. sig-testing, please remember this one.
Well, if we need a bucket, okay, I will create a bucket. That's. I thought we had a bucket for this, but yeah, I will take a look and create a bucket. Should not be a problem.
But yeah, I was just going to add to that I think that would help get us a bit more realistic expectations of what we actually have to support within the UI, like the scale that we have to support. I think if you go load like cert manager test cases, it will literally crash your browser because it just loads thousands and thousands. So it'd be pretty valuable for us to understand the scale that we also need to operate at, which I think we want to push it as far as we can, but I don't want to be fighting this constantly if we don't actually need to show these test cases at all.
On that, I had I have a PR open for like the homepage, right? That's fine if we trash it or whatever. But I use Claude to help me like sort all this stuff. I can't like there's so many things here, and it's sorted it into like a tiered open close widget thing that if you can look at it if you want. And it helped me kind of go, what are we actually looking at? And because there's a lot of stuff that I'm not familiar with in there even related to what's running. And I'm sure it would be easier to then kind of probably should sit down and organize and go, what do we need? What do we want? What do we all want loaded at once? Is there too many things? And is there ways we can, pare that down but help through navigation to get to what you want without having to like wander through 1,000 different test sets.
Yeah, I'll say like I do appreciate the activity here. I really do not want to try and shoot down people doing things. I'm just trying to put on my engineering hat as somebody who is not very experienced with front end, but knows a tiny bit and has some aesthetic opinions and whatnot. And more importantly, like is familiar with the current test grid UI and a lot of the problems with it. A lot of the new additions are great, and again, I do not want to shoot them down. The parts that I'm a little bit worried about are basically the priority for getting the test grid UI up and running, as well as like just in general. I think similar to large backend feature adds or things where we're significantly changing something from the status quo. Like Brady was saying, sitting down and doing like a brief discussion on design or having like a brief design proposal, I think would be great. I'm not looking for anything formal, more just the type of thing where it's discussing like a thing or like an issue of like, hey, I'm intending to do X change. It's going to like end up with Y. So like if we're changing the index page, for instance, like we are changing to tab bar or expandable like tab bar on the left and then like showing the main view. And then I think that's a good place to discuss, for instance, like, is that worth it compared to having the tabs on the top, for instance, because of like the space that the grid view tends to take up? Do we need it to have like X or Y? Is that going to make things significantly more complicated? And is it worth that complication to like add it? That kind of thing. That was also why I was like, or no, I think multiple PRs because there's a bunch being done at once in there, would be good to discuss because some of these are like, I think are legitimate concerns. Some of them are large changes. Some of them I have nitpicks about, but I am happy to be overruled by everybody else being like, nah, that looks great. And I'm like, okay, I'm just biased then. That's fine. But yeah, I think just like, again, I'm not looking for anything formal, just a slight step back and then being like, I am intending to change X. Do folks agree? I will also give my part of like a bit of guilt here because like Brady, I know that we've discussed things one-on-one, but I think that is not necessarily in public spaces, and it probably would have to like be in a public space so people can give feedback. That is my bad. Yeah. Also, that I am happy to review the PRs and whatnot. I'm just a little bit like I see a large PR or a large rewrite, and I'm like, oh no, I am not sure how to do this because it is not necessarily like a wrong or bad thing, but it does want some consideration, I think. So that's all. The other bit is like, I think just in terms of getting like an instance set up, there is I think all of the fun stuff, which is making the UI look cooler and be more modern and things like that. There is like concrete UX changes, either as improvements or like side grades, I would say. And then there's the other things that are concerns for the running of the instance itself. So is it stood up on the public K8s infra, which does need to be done. We need that migration done at some point. And then is it performant and has feature parity. And I think those are the two actual biggest things, but those are also the two hardest things. So yeah, I understand if people are not necessarily rushing to do that one. That's the kind of thing where it's like, I would like to do it. This quarter has ended up kind of busy to start. So the smartest thing is probably just to count on me throwing something in at a random time and not like a specifically scheduled time, unless I have people willing to just ping me repeatedly for, hey, can we expect like the API update you promised? Yeah, I'm juggling like a few things. So, okay, my rant over. Oh, actually, one more thing. CSS wise. I just have a personal bias against Tailwind, honestly. I think it's also probably fine. Mostly just that it's hard to rip out later, so like that was why I was saying we might want to look at it now. My lean I think would be vanilla CSS or Sass, because I think our CSS doesn't need to be super complicated. Kind of same thing for framework. Lit was originally chosen, I believe, because it reads relatively clearly, even if it is also like a little bit more not verbose, but like it's a little bit specific about what it's doing. But conversely, it also means that there isn't like a lot to get up to speed with necessarily to be able to make changes there. If we decide to swap to a framework, I don't actually care too much. I think we should just have a quick justification of like why this is better than the current like standard that we have. What are its pros and cons? That's all. Okay. Actually done. Sorry. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go into another tangent here because I got interested in this topic because like from the Prow perspective, we got Prow UI bit still uses the material light things. That's not even maintenance mode, that's like abandoned currently. And we got bit by it disappearing from the internet. Now we use it from someone's CDN. And I wonder if there is UI work happening on test grid. I wonder, like I was thinking in the recent past, like I will try to spawn something like UI technical modernization. Let's move out of the abandoned framework. Let's move out into something new, maybe new version of Light or whatever. But I wonder, like maybe there are opportunities for us to, I don't know, use the same thing and maybe increase the maybe increase the opportunities like for people who want to do front-end work to move between these projects in sig testing. I don't have specific plans, but wanted to bring this up.
Ben P.
Yeah, it sounds like I might be the only one here who's done a lot of UI. I did UI and I'm not currently a UI dev, but I did for like 15 years, including 5 on like OpenShift, right, on their old and new console back in the day. So plenty of React, Vue, Angular, before that Backbone, all the crap that has changed every 2 years because every 2 years we got to have a new UI framework until the modern React Angular 2 Vue kind of feud. So my stronger opinion, maybe because of that, would be to drop lit and switch early because I don't think there's a lot going on with lit. And I didn't see much for widget libraries, but I would absolutely encourage a widget library so we're not asking test grid devs to make widgets from scratch. Like I did a collapsible and it was like, there's not a collapsible? Weird. In whatever it's called out there right now, the material web. So fine if it's a material framework or whatever, but I threw in there like, React Tailwind and Daisy UI is something I did recently for a little personal project and it flew fast. I didn't really write any custom CSS at all. And I love that personally. You get themes for free and you get a couple different, 6, 8 different dark and light themes and just switch between them as long as you're not doing like CSS by hand. I think at this point is a lot for people who aren't front end devs. I don't even really want to do CSS that much anymore. I kind of burnt out on it. I'm like, I don't, it's the less possible. And I do think a Tailwind approach does remove actually needing to write CSS and there's by hand, which is nice, but that's for a later discussion. But I would definitely move to something that at least provides a lot more of the out of the box widgets so we don't have to build them. And that will help unification across pages because it just automatically would all look the same, right? Ideally something that has a couple themes too, because a lot of people just like light and dark. So yay, freebie work, why not?
Brady?
Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with notes. I'm doing a very poor job of it today.
No worries, thank you.
To Peter's point, so I do React and I work on Quay at Red Hat. So I end up having to do a lot of front end work, and it is honestly, if you would have told me a year ago that this is what I do for my full-time job, I would have said no, thank you. I'd rather do anything else. But within Red Hat, we have the Patternify framework, which is our own homegrown framework. The only reason I like it is because literally everything is like out of the box. Like I literally just pick and choose, and I want to use this. I want to design this. I do not want to use Patternfly for this. I'm not saying that at all. What I am suggesting is that we do lean in to what Peter is saying as hard as we can if we want a unified experience, I guess, across Prow UI, across Test Grid. So these don't seem like a bunch of different projects, right? They can actually seem more cohesive and under the Kubernetes org. I definitely would like us to take a step back, I guess, then and have a bigger design conversation, at least to understand some of the specifics of what we actually want to get out of even a framework or some shared components that we can use within both. So,
Yeah, shared components, big win.
Yeah, I'll throw my hand in here. I agree with shared components and whatnot. I actually don't know why we weren't using that currently. It might have just been like, again, this was kind of spawned out of Google, so there's a lot of like, also running the most bare bones things is the easiest thing to get approval for. We have a little bit more options now that this is open source, and I am not worrying about backporting this or anything. So yeah, that's it. I still think like, actually, yeah. I think to that point, a design discussion and a rough idea of like, there's a few different things to tackle here would be great. It sounds like we want some discussion. We can expand it to Prow and Test Grid, because honestly, having a shared framework for those would be great for just making it easier to make changes across both. If somebody is more familiar with like one area of test infra, it would be great if they are also more familiar with the other area of test infra. And arbitrarily doing two different things for that sounds just unnecessary. So framework choices, I think UX is a different consideration from the framework choices. That is stuff like, I think the difference between feature parity versus like actual new additions that we want for improvements, especially if they're going to be before like the entire instance is launched on community infra. And then we have community infra migration backend support, including stuff like the performance issues. I think that might be half front end, half back end. Like I discovered, for instance, that I think the difference between the API instances that I know are running is the external one is running with way lower CPU or memory, one of the two. I'm guessing that might be part of the performance issues. For instance, that's worth just me going and or sorry, somebody going and bumping up those resources in the deployment and us just seeing how that changes. But yeah. Okay, I think we can continue discussing this, but I think this might be good to start kicking it out to like either a doc or maybe an issue to kind of hash things out, or just schedule a separate meeting for like, hey, folks interested in the UI in particular, do we want to just meet and like have a big old session throwing a bunch of things to the wall and then write an issue with whatever sticks? Do you folks have a preference for like async versus like getting a bit more done in a synchronous meeting, and I can schedule that out?
I would tend to say a synchronous might be more productive, at least to start with, and I have preference for a GitHub issue for tracking it over a doc personally, but whatever y'all
Yeah,
want.
that's fair.
I think we would benefit from a short burst of synchronous work and then maybe continue on async.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Ernest says async.
I mean, the big downside to synchronous is it's very hard to get everyone together at the same time. But if you have like a small group of like, I don't know, the people that are like leading the UI work or something, then that's less of a problem. And it's good to get things moving. We've done this in many places in sig testing where we've depended on something like meeting at KubeCon to like have the TLs hash out what to do with the E2E framework or something like that was not moving through just the like standard community discussions. I would encourage as much as possible though for things that don't need that to use the asynchronous and public mediums like GitHub issues. Like for example, I mentioned the resource bump because if you file an issue for that, there are more of us that can probably find a moment to poke at that versus I do not have the bandwidth to take backup UI stuff. I just can't.
Yeah. Resources bump I can file after this. It really is a simple change. It will need to be in the GCP test grid repo, but I believe people can just open a PR there and it's just a Kate's deployment file. Peter?
Are some people attending KubeCon in 3 weeks or something? Like maybe we could do a little session if some people are attending.
I will not be there, but I am happy to follow up afterwards if folks do have a discussion there. So
I will not be at this one either. Last one could have made it.
Yeah, same. I had support, but I just don't have time right now. There's too much going on. I think that's pretty broadly true so far from what I'm seeing from like US tech companies. Like we're sending mostly folks from Europe this time, and a handful of high level people. I was actually in the approved list, but I'm just like I found out pretty late, and I have way too much this month, and I didn't have any like topics to push this time. I've seen that pretty broadly. I think this year is going to be a bad year for in-person meetings because that's happening at this one, and then in November. First of all, it's not till November, and second of all, a lot of people are not going to want to travel to the U.S., so it's going to be really difficult to get people in a room this year.
Yeah, I can second that. I'll be in Amsterdam because it's just a train ride away from me and it's convenient. But I don't plan to go to the US.
Yeah,
So it sounds like we have
that's
to async over Zoom. Yeah. I mean, sync over Zoom. Sorry.
Got it. Okay, I was gonna ask for the clarification. Yeah, I think I agree with the initial burst of energy. I don't want to leave out folks who are interested. So I think the compromise, if folks agree, might just be synchronously over Zoom to get something started. We largely stick to brainstorming or breakdown of things, record everything relevant in a GitHub issue, or elsewhere linked to like an issue. And then ensure that we don't have any like final decisions from like the synchronous meeting. We'll save that for like talking about in the repo. But just like a working meeting, I think would be good, and also ensures that I definitely have time set aside, for instance, to like actually look at and consider things. So, okay. If that's the case, I'll schedule this separately from the next sig testing biweekly. So I might just try and do the same time slot next week, or I'll figure something out in the Slack with polling folks. But yeah. Okay. Cool. Anything else folks want to discuss then? Or no?
Oh yeah, I put a few topics. I think I'm gonna get pushback on this because it's not take. So OpenShift currently have like a specific skill to troubleshoot pro job failure. And I was talking about this with some people, and I realized like skill are just markdown, so we could have those for us. I mean, for the community, and we basically say, okay, install the skill, use that to troubleshoot any pro job. Problem is like ecosystem fragmentation because a cloud scale may not be compatible with Gemini CLI, Codex, OpenCode, the four major. So I'm wondering if we can have a skill for cloud code. We start with that and we basically enhance it to add support of like Gemini CLI later. But I'm looking for adoption. Is like, is this something sig testing want to be owner of? Or do I need to basically start to basically talk to other SIGs about ownership?
Yep.
It's Markdown, it's not code. You basically have to like maintain Markdown to and be sure it's following prompt and generating best practices, those kind of things. I already did it in some extent where I basically say do not use G-Cloud to talk to GCS, just use curl because bucket is public, those kind of things. It's kind of working, but now I'm looking at, hey, do we want to have like SIG ownership for this? Which open the door to basically things we want to add to the developer experience based on AI agentic tools. Yes, Ben, you have an opinion.
I think Peter first, though.
Peter had his hand up first. Yeah.
I don't know. So we have a lot for OpenShift, and I think most of the things that we have for OpenShift is it's focused not on Prow itself, but it's focused on whatever we run in Prow, the workload. So, but I have been thinking about this a lot, and I think there's I would like to have a suite of skills for Prow, but there's a lot of opportunities also like skills that like users of jobs could use, like repo config maintainers could use, but I never had time, and I've never had an idea how to scope it properly. So I would be happy to have anything AI related for Prow, but I don't have much space and time personally.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We talk about basically maintaining Markdown. There's no binary generate. So the idea of CV is more like something not happening.
Yeah.
The idea of like AI prompt injection is basically something we need to think about from a security perspective. Like that's what I'm saying is like basically, but we basically talk about analyzing logs.
I think the biggest problem is something that Peter already touched on. Like the workloads we're running are super different for the different Prow instances, so it's kind of hard to have one general to Prow. We could put something in test infra for Kubernetes, but then in the Kubernetes project, the problem we're going to have is discoverability. Like if you go to ask your agent to do, like, how are we going to get people installing the skills? The other problem we have is we don't pick winners and we don't king make. Like we avoid things like proudly sponsored by, I don't know, material.js or whatever. Like we we just use things that are popular. So like if we're looking at a JS framework, we might use React just because it's popular. We're not trying to get in the business of like, oh, someone has a new build tool, let's switch all of our stuff to it and promote it. Like maybe a small project might toy with those things, but for like the core organization, we intentionally avoid that because it creates such a friction point where everyone wants to like promote their thing. I have some concern about that, where that it doesn't seem like so far you can actually write generic skills for all the tools, so you have to write them for a particular tool. And then we have to pick. The other problem I've seen is that they don't actually seem to hold up super well because the model keeps evolving. So like if I were trying to invest in AI for sig testing, I would probably be thinking about how can we just surface more info, like improve our docs, or like make the proud results page include some text that hints that you should look in the artifacts link because it's super useful, but it looks like just another thing on the page, and there's not much text about it either. So I don't know why an agent would decide to crawl through it. Like those could be general. When you write something for humans, that's what these tools are ingesting. But when we write things for like one tool, it's kind of point in time useful for one tool set, and they're in pretty high competition right now, which makes it sort of touchy for us. Let's say you're fine with like Gemini and Claude or something, great, okay. Then what happens when someone asks for like Grok? Is that a place we want to go? How does the community even handle that discussion? That's the sort of thing that that's sort of hole we don't want to like get.
Are these markdown files not generalized at this point? Or no?
Exactly. Basically, we're talking about markdown files, and the major tool provides some kind of like support to some extent to basically its skill. I'll call it a skill, but I can basically call it agent insertion, because we're talking about agent insertion with compatibility with AI CLI tools. And I think like if we basically say, okay, let's start with trying to achieve maximum compatibility, we don't have to basically decide which one we want to go with. We basically define the baseline. And now like as like the first layer, because over time we know there's going to be adjustment. Like for example, Gemini has an instruction to like support Cloud Code Scale and also other tools like that.
They aren't. They use different paths. This is the same problem we've had when people have wanted to add just like general docs for agents in the repos.
Yeah.
I've been pushing about that for the same reason, because it means that we have to explicitly add at least like a symlink or something for each individual agent, as opposed to most of the text that I've seen people putting in these files. You could just these are actually should be README updates. Like you're improving our developer docs. Please just improve our developer docs. Don't write like a Claude specific developer doc and add like 10 files to the repo that all need to be updated, or just a bunch of like, this is the same file, but it's a symlink and it's sort, and then we're trying to find like text that works for both. The skills have the same problem from what I can tell. Like Gemini skills are in .gemini/skills. They all because they know that they don't quite read them the same, and they all want to like win, they all use a different file path for the like docs and skills and stuff. So we can do what some people said so far and just like, oh, just symlink all the paths, but then you are also explicitly saying I support Claude, I support Gemini, which opens us up to, well, which ones are we going to permit?
Yeah.
And that's not a fun place to be.
We can also basically say we can also say we define a list and we basically say the rest is not supported. It's like we do this for like the
but
secret
that invites the conversation. Why not this one? And like we don't have a policy for that as a project, and I don't think we want to. In almost all cases, you could just write, if you just write Markdown that is useful for humans and for agents, they will read it. Like that's what the training pass is going over. The main takeaway that we've had in our org is that you need to have useful developer docs. Because if you don't have good enough developer docs, then there's nothing for the tool to read from. So I would point to, for example, in Kubernetes for a config with Prow, we need to nail down what the infrastructure looks like and start actually documenting it. We've had an open issue for that. I think it's similar for Prow. Like there are like gaps in the config docs or things like that. If we improve that, then it will work for all the tools and we don't lose time to debates about if some controversial agent should be supported or whatever. There's a good article about the broader version of this problem that I'm going to link. Unfortunately, their site really needs fixing. Hopefully you all can. No, it's down.
Probably a good article.
The site was like not maintained for a long time, so it was like, I guess only, but there's a PDF of it here. It also, I mean, it has a Wikipedia page. The TLDR is that when we like over optimize for like a current thing, then that energy winds up being wasted because the models just get better at doing the general purpose thing. So I would encourage that we invest in general purpose like docs and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Which
I'm in agreement with pretty much everything you are saying, but like it seems that for some reason the result is right now we fail to do anything, like because like we know that all these like docs should be improved, and if we improve them, then the agents would use them. But like seems that like everyone else is moving forward with like let's just dump a heaps of markdown into the repositories, and it seems that like it's kind of working.
I was actually going to say the opposite, kind of. Honestly, this sounds like the best incentive to improve the docs that I've heard. Like,
Well,
I think given the points that you raised, Ben, this is like, what is it? It does sound like a annoyance to have to try and make this work with a bunch of agents in the project officially. And also developer docs are always useful and are never up to date in as much as they could be. So like if improving the docs maybe isn't perfect for agents, but is like a marked improvement, then like win-win for everybody.
yeah, I mean, Prows are mostly pretty good. Like I see two main problems that are actually like aware of this group, but separate. One is the sig-testing thing. We need to we haven't written docs about like how to configure jobs for the Kubernetes CI, because when we've gone to do that, we said, well, we're probably going to alter the actual infrastructure, so don't tell people about the specifics so they don't depend on it yet. We have to finally nail that down, and then like I will find some time, or someone will find some time to write up like this is how you should configure CI jobs for Kubernetes. The like super general config docs mostly have what you need, but that's not enough to realistically write a job. You need to understand like we think you should probably use the kubekins image. It's not amazing, but it does the job. Or like this is when you should use the EKS cluster versus this. This is how you should think about like memory and compute. These are the tools that we have available to run E2E. Like that. The other problem we have is that Kubernetes developer docs are all over the place because there's been partial efforts to combine them. I've raised this to contributor experience. I'm going to raise it again. It's on my to-do list. We have kubernetes.dev. We have the community repo. We have docs in the individual subprojects. We have them in test infra. They're scattered. So that's one of the problems I've seen, is that when people say, oh yeah, I should write some docs for this, they don't know where to put it. And that this extends to me as well. I would like to see us filter more of this into like one place, if that's the community repo or kubernetes.dev. The things that are actually just totally Proud General should be in the Proud docs, and they are. but there's a bunch of like how to debug a Kubernetes CI job. The content exists, but to get an agent to find it, it's not good because humans can't find it because it's scattershot. And then that also means people aren't doing a very good job regularly updating it because you have to know about it. So I've even started to see a pattern at Google where like people are writing docs for each other about how to do Kubernetes things and just like throwing it in a Google Doc because of the friction on like where to contribute that information back to upstream. I have a couple of those on my backlog that are like, I'm just going to convert them to Markdown and publish them. But then I ran into that same problem. So I think that's the biggest thing is that Kubernetes let the documentation get really fragmented, and in certain places it's really good, like the end user how to use Kubernetes, or like some of the sub projects like Prow and Kind have their own doc site that covers things pretty well. But then when you need to know, do this for Kubernetes as a contributor, some of that's on Kubernetes.dev, some of it's in the Kubernetes repo, some of it's in Kubernetes community, some of it's in test infra, some of it's in Prow. It's like, and some of them have multiple versions because of like partial migration to the dev site. So this is not in our charter, but the project needs to get that fixed so people have an obvious place to contribute to our own developer docs. And to do things like cross-linking, go look at the prow.ktes.io docs when you're doing these things. That one comes up a lot. Like, for example, I noticed that most of our community doesn't understand that like we have a nice auto-generated page with all of the command usage. But because we link so much text in the bot messages, everyone just skims past that. And then we don't get all this in our dev guide, and people aren't looking at the dev guide because it's like, wait, it's also pretty hard to update because the dev guide at Kubernetes.dev is also split into 2 repos. It's really confusing to update, and it like does a async pull of the content from one to the other. I've recently updated some of our contributor docs, and it was a difficult process. So sig-testing doesn't own that, but I think if some of us have some time and are interested in the problem, reach out about that and improve that, then we could consolidate on something like Kubernetes.dev for the how to debug prow.ktes.io, how to config it. And I would write content there and understand that it's facing the humans and all of the agents, and that having it scattershot does that. So I worry about the same thing with the skills. Like skills will be like yet another location to look for Markdown, and it's already split across like 8 places.
I don't want to volunteer you for this because you are already busy, Ben, but do we have an issue anchoring like, hey, this is the problem that we have. We need somebody to work on it?
I need to go back to contributor experience, I think. Yeah, it's another one of those like tragedy common things where it doesn't have a clear owner, but we wound up at this place where like we kind of have some nice dev doc site, but it's a little bit of a mess. And then we have a lot of other dev content that is in other places, and there's no clear guidance for anyone, even the most senior contributors of the project. Should I put content like in GoDoc? Should I put it in a README in the Kubernetes repo? Should I put it in Kubernetes.dev? Do I put it in Kubernetes community? And it makes it really hard to find like, oh, we have a great flaky test debugging guide, but it's like over in some folder buried in Kubernetes community that I don't know how you would find this. So my suggestion is we should consolidate on the web ones, backed by Markdown in a repo, but the web ones, because they'll be search indexed. The search indexing of GitHub is bad. GitHub's own search is okay, but people don't usually reach for that. And for public internet, it really commonly winds up picking up forks that are out of date. Like for a long time, when you search for various Kubernetes contributor docs, you would find the OpenShift fork because they still had it in the main Kubernetes repo indexed, but it had been moved to some other repo in upstream. Like that, fixing that. And I think the main way you fix that is we put it on Kubernetes.dev, we put it on the Prow doc site, and we like cross-link them. And then we can put useful information for tooling there while we're at it. But what I don't want to do is make the developer docs problem have another folder in another place that we're trying to get people to look at.
Can we maybe have that described as an issue for like the sig testing particular bit, and then throw that to Contribix for a discussion on like, hey, this is like an example of the thing that we have. We also need this all for the rest of the project. Let's maybe just make this general guidelines. If that ends up obsoleting the sig testing issue entirely, then like I think problem solved.
I'm thinking about how to frame it. I don't want to like upset any feelings. I don't think any one person did any of this, but the end state that we're in now is painful. I think we
I
need to
think
get
as
to
long
a
as we're
place where
not
it's like easy to contribute to kubernetes.dev, and that we also have some guidance in there about where you should put dev content. And I think that's somewhere between maybe sig arch and contributor experience. I think probably the only thing that's going to get that moving is going to the meetings. When I've filed issues for this kind of problem before, when you have such a community wide policy problem, single threaded GitHub comment pages do not work well.
Yeah, I guess I'm
Especially if you
more
have like a really complicated design, right? You don't design it in a GitHub issue. It falls apart quickly. You usually do some pre-discussion in some other forum, and then you write like a PR with a design doc and people review that. When we go back and forth on issues, you can find a whole litany of ones I've filed in like Kubernetes community that never went anywhere because you can't achieve consensus in that format. I'll take a to-do item.
okay. Yeah, I think as long as it's being tracked somehow, including if that's just in your mental library, that's
We also
fine.
could just like one of us could just take a stab at adding some cross references from kubernetes.dev to see if we can get people driving to that. Because one of the things I've noticed is that I have to keep like sending people the proud doc site. So that might even be a place to start. It's like just take a stab at. Well, you can. There is a way to contribute to kubernetes.dev now. It's been a little while since my last attempt. One of us could take a stab at like figure out where in the developer guide it should link to the current proud docs. Yeah. Arno, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if you basically want to like continue the meeting because I was like trying to talk quickly about two other things related to AI. But if people are happy to stay, we can wrap up in like 5 minutes.
I can stay for a little bit, so people are not obligated to stay. We are definitely past time. Sorry about that. But yeah, if folks want to just keep this open for discussing a bit, go for it.
I will start with basically something very simple. I was thinking maybe we want to build a AI agent as a proud plugin where you basically send a command to, I would say, pull request on an issue. I would say, okay, like do triage or review this pull request of whatever. We can basically submit the prompt to a GitHub command. So I'm like curious about this. They are like concerned about infrastructure, especially in modern France, because we come back to the notion of kingmaking because yeah, we have access to Gemini, but we don't have access to cloud. So maybe we want to go with open source model, but the idea will be on the side of Prow. We want a Prow plugin before talk about basic infrastructure.
Proud plugin to do PR reviews.
More like a fork of
Yeah.
the Copilot agent.
I had some meetings with folks at KubeCon last time about this, and my extremely strong stance was that completely automated PR reviews are the wrong approach, and that AI agents should be useful tools for humans doing PR reviews. The biggest problem with that is that it will write some review comment and tell a new contributor, hey, you should do something this way. And then the human reviewer will finally take a look and they'll be like, no, why did you change that? That's wrong. That is just a miserable experience. And that's why, like, for all the AI tooling we have access to, very little of our reviews internally are just like a completely automated review comment. Instead, it's more like when someone goes to review, like if I'm authoring a review comment, it can generate a suggested diff based on the comment, and I like select if I want to keep it or not. I talked to some folks in the community that were playing with like a Chrome plugin for this sort of thing. We've also talked to some GitHub folks. I really think we want to do that. It's very hard to have non-deterministic tools automatically comment on things and not have that go wrong.
I think that's a user experience problem, but the reality of things is basically we're already doing that in some repo, because I basically saw like people on pull requests tagging the GitHub agent to do code review.
Sure, they can,
So
and the experience so far generally has been mixed, and we haven't been
yeah,
recommending it broadly. I don't think we want to pay to replicate that experience.
okay, okay.
I think I've been really encouraging people to use these tools to help go write things like Cube API linter. Like you can leverage the the tooling to create something that will write a reliable feedback on something, or to use it for like you're writing your review, help you look through the PR and like help you write suggested diffs and that sort of thing. What I don't think we're ready for is um letting one of these things loose on its own. um
In
we've
that
been, we've been blocking
in
that.
in that case, we can scope the action of the agent.
Like I said, you should reach out to do you know Walter Fender, one of the cloud provider folks? He had a couple
Yeah.
people working on some tooling, and we kind of nudged in the same direction. They came to one of the broader meetings about this stuff at the last KubeCon, and I think we had some pretty productive discussions with a handful of like SIG leads and stuff about this. I don't know where that project wound up though, but yeah, I think there's a room to build tooling. I wouldn't. The other thing is, we've built proud plugins that do reviews before, and it hasn't gone well for similar reasons. That like you really want it scoped to a particular repo. So like for example, GoLint, like it just doesn't work because it's using the wrong version. I think writing one that will be like general purpose to everyone with automated comments will not go very well.
Oh, for sure, it's not going because there's so many room for abuse about this. But that's what I'm saying is like more like the idea of having a pro plugin is not bad. Is how we basically built it. That's important. It basically, okay, do we want to like have a focus on like, because you can have system around that prevent some basically action.
I just don't think that like a plugin brings a lot to this. Like the reason that we have plugins for other things is because they share information. Otherwise, at the end of the day, it's just a GitHub webhook, and like our
Yeah.
infrastructure for webhooks is not that special. It's pretty easy to write. It's very simple, especially now that you can AI generate code to write something that like validates the webhook HMAC and responds to it. There are good libraries for this. The reason that we write things as proud plugins is because of the integration between them, like how the approval mechanisms interact, that sort of thing. How they merge robot versus the job config need to understand each other. The something that's just writing review comments doesn't have a lot of room to interact with the rest of the system, and probably makes more sense as a standalone component.
Oh, okay.
But also, again, I would strongly encourage writing it from the perspective of like, if I am a Kubernetes PR reviewer, what tooling can I have available to me to make reviews more efficient, as opposed to like, we're not going to create any new reviewers. There was a similar version of this in Chairs and Tech Leads meeting. We were discussing about automated PR generation and how one of the problems is, sure, we could automate away all of our easy tasks, but then how do we onboard new contributors if we're just like robo closing all the easy issues, right? Like we probably want to leave them in Kubernetes. I think it's similar here. Like if you robo all of the like easy part of of like do a first pass review, not only do you have the churn, but also like we want people to sign up to do first pass reviews so that they can become an actual approver. And we aren't planning to make the agent an approver. I do not think the community will go for that. So if we run around doing all of the first pass reviews, then no one is working on the contributor ladder to become an approver.
Okay, so my perspective is more like the privilege. When I say privilege, in the sense that people working on like large company or company with budget for AI use Cloud Code to basically do stuff. It's kind of impossible to know about this. Like, that's not like no one on the internet know you use AI bot. The idea to have a tooling leveraging LLMs is more like to bring fairness between maintainers, because we basically it's not easy to get a license for GitHub Copilot, for example, of Cloud Code.
Well, actually, Copilot is provided to all of our org members. I'm not opposed to us providing tooling. I just think that if that tooling should be assistive tooling as opposed to like taking over the role.
Okay, so it's still a matter of basically how we want to build the tool, not necessarily the IT of the tool.
Yeah, I like I said, Walter was building something that was like, this is how we would run it. And I think my suggestion was that K8s.mp4, while I couldn't assert for sure, would probably be open to running something like that if they get the details right. They had some other bits that we wouldn't want to run, like they were opening a code editing sandbox, and I was like, GitHub actually provides that for us. We should leverage that for free, right? But that's also a good point, by the way. Our community members are recognized by GitHub and other entities as key open source maintainers. And so, for example, if you use VS Code and you just want to use Copilot, that is provided to anyone that meets our org membership. So the floor on this is not quite so terrible as it might be for other open source projects.
Okay.
I didn't actually know that. Do you know, do they offer any particular models?
I don't remember the details because I poked at it and was like, cool, I don't particularly care for this.
They basically offer all the model they ship in their model garden.
But like basically if you log into VS Code, since that is also Microsoft, with your GitHub account, and your GitHub account is an org member, GitHub's offering for open source maintainers, anywhere that they have an offering like that, is enabled by being a Kubernetes org member.
Neat. That's kind of cool. I work at Microsoft, so I don't know the difference between what I get for that and what I get for working at Microsoft. I just got a pile of them in there.
I've intermittently poked at it just a little bit to like keep tabs, but obviously expected to use Gemini primarily. So
yeah.
But that's true on like features on GitHub side as well. So for example, we're also on an enterprise instance that's compensated for our orgs. There's also recently been like Claude is providing some, but it looked to me like that one's not permanent though. It's like you can get like 6 months or something like that of it was like Claude Max or something like that. I don't remember. At least there was a discussion at Google about if we're allowed to do this, and it's not resolved yet, so I haven't followed up. But I saw a thread in Slack that they're providing this, and some people had requested. I think though that it would make sense for us to use some of our credits for this. I think, like for example, there's already been a couple discussions at Google. I think Googlers would be fine doing it. I imagine Amazon would also be fine putting some resources to it. The problem is how we do it. So similarly, if you make it an auto review robot, then you're really propping up like this agent is the one that gets to do Kubernetes reviews. I had a similar discussion with a coworker that has a tool that you can assign to implement PRs, and the stance that we've taken so far is that we're not going to bring that to the Kubernetes project because it opens the door to how do you make a reasonable policy for who's allowed to send their robots just making PRs. The Kubernetes project policy is that you need to be, as a human, responsible for submitting your change. You need to sign the CLA, and you're welcome to use tooling like that, but like don't send do not send like robot accounts to us. We're gonna close it, ban it, whatever. And we already have some. I think it's similar for the review. Like if we can make tooling available for the humans to use, that's great. And I don't think there will be much controversy. But if we make it totally automated, then it's like, then it's going to create a little mini war for like, well, why isn't it Copilot? Or yeah, and we want to avoid that. And if you make it available as tooling that a human's using, then we're able to use it without making a big deal out of it. But if you kind of have like at Gemini commenting on every Kubernetes PR, then that's going to create drama. It's the same way we do with our testing, right? Like we kind of avoid getting into all the details of like what exactly are we using. The reality is most of our CI is using containerd because reasons, but we don't like broadcast that because then it creates the, oh, well, you should be using cryo everywhere. We're like, okay, we test both, but there are like practical concerns here, right? And then people want to know like which particular version. So I think it's the same thing with this tooling. We're going to be like, why isn't it, this model? That conversation is never going to happen if it's just like, here's a tool you can use to help you as a reviewer. But if it's, this thing is automatically reviewing my PRs, then people are going to have really strong opinions about it.
I'm avoiding asking it what everybody's opinion is on the different models' ability to write code.
It depends.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
leave that for Slack.
Okay, I think I'm done here about all the AI subjects.
Okay, yeah. Unless anybody has any more specific things to add literally right now, I think we can call that good. And then as always, async follow-up in Slack and whatnot is always great. But yeah. Thanks, folks, and thanks for the healthy discussion. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Thanks.
Ciao, Theo.